you for coming, and good afternoon. I would like to acknowledge that we are gathered here today on the territory of the Lekwungen-speaking people of the Sanghees and Esquimalt nations. I'm here to talk about the next increase in the provincial minimum wage. Our province is the best place to live, work, and raise our families in North America. How proud we are. However, we are not immune to global inflation. While the cost of living has gone up quickly across the country, we have seen a bigger jump here in BC than the national average, and more people are finding difficult to meet ends meet. Those earning the lowest wage and their families are forced to make difficult decisions every day. Many of the lowest wage earners are people who work tirelessly during the pandemic to provide us the essential services for the rest of us. When times are tough, we need to ensure that our lowest paid workers don't fall further behind. Our government is committed to helping people struggling to cover the cost of necessities. And this includes support like the BC's affordability credit that 85% of British Columbians will receive in the next few days. This is the third credit we have delivered since October to provide extra money up to $410 for a family with 2 children to help offset the current high inflation rate. And having a minimum wage that keeps up with the rising cost of living is also a key step in our effort to lift people out of poverty. Our government has promised to link future minimum wage increases to inflation, so wages keep pace in a predictable way for workers and businesses. We did so in 2022 when we increased the minimum wage by 2.8%, which was the increase in the cost of living in BC in 2021. Today, I'm announcing that effective June 1st, the general minimum wage will increase by $1.10 an hour to $16.75 an hour. This 6.9% increase is based on BC's average annual rate in 2022. This increase is necessary for low-income earners to keep up with rising costs. Along with changes to the general minimum wage, there will also be a 6.9% increase to alternate minimum wages. Specifically, the minimum daily or monthly rates in live-in camp leaders, live-in home support workers, and resident caretakers. Farm workers who hand harvest 15 specific crops will also see the rates increase by 6.9% as of January 1st, 2024, at the start of the next harvest season. Looking across the country, most of the other provinces and territories have also announced increases to their minimum wages. In percentage terms, most increases are similar to BC or higher. For example, Ontario minimum wage will increase on October 1st, going from $15.50 an hour to $16.55 per hour, which is a 6.8% increase. Our government will continue to build an economy that works for all British Columbians. And tying the minimum wage to inflation is the right thing to do, because when times are tough, we cannot leave our lowest paid workers behind. Now I would like to introduce my colleague, the Minister of Jobs, Economic Development and Innovations, Brenda Bailey, to share her thoughts.
Good afternoon. First, I'd like to recognize and acknowledge the Lekwungen peoples, the Sanghees and Esquimalt nations, on whose territories we're speaking today. It's a pleasure to be here with you all to demonstrate our government's commitment to people and a stronger future. Today, I want to take a moment to talk directly to business owners, because I understand how challenging the past few years have been for you. Small businesses are the backbone of our economy, and thanks to their work and determination, only 3.5% of BC workers were paid at minimum wage last year. Clearly, the vast majority of businesses are seeing the value of paying their staff a fair wage, which is a sign of a strong economy. Raising the minimum wage is an important step to make sure BC's lowest paid workers are paid properly and to make BC more attractive to workers who can help fill the job openings that many businesses tell me about. As a government, we fully recognize that costs have gone up for small businesses. It's the result of global inflation, supply chain shortages that are being felt all around the world, and BC is not exempt. And that is why we have continued to be there for businesses, with supports like giving restaurants access to permanent wholesale pricing on liquor and capping the fees that food delivery services charge to restaurants, and a BC Hydro tax credit, an average of $500, and new tools so that municipalities can provide property tax relief to small businesses. And it's why we will keep looking at how we can support small businesses as we build on our strong economic recovery. Last year alone, BC created 62,900 jobs, and 2/3 of that growth in 2022 was in women's employment. I think that's a direct result of our work to invest in affordable and accessible daycare. And we know that our childcare plan is working. It's helping parents balance their needs and getting them into the workforce to fill job openings that many businesses are experiencing. And we've heard that this is extremely important to businesses. Our Stronger BC economic plan is working, with more people employed in good-paying, family-supporting jobs. And we are continuing to listen to the needs of businesses as we move forward, just as we have in the past. Because we know that a strong economy that works for all is an economy that's good for workers and good for businesses. And that is an economy that's built to succeed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. And now I would like to invite Marissa Iacobucci to speak about her experience as a worker.
Thank you and good afternoon. My name is Marissa Iacobucci and I work at a private liquor store. I'm a proud Service Employees International Union member and a leader in the Beverage Workers Rising campaign. In addition to working in the industry for 7 years, I'm also attending post-secondary school, studying psychology and researching social justice to work towards my future. Working in low-wage jobs such as retail or service can be frustrating, challenging, and stressful. As a student and young worker in the province who has only worked minimum wage jobs in the service and retail sector, I personally know how challenging it can be to make ends meet while keeping up with the rising cost of living. Most of my coworkers live paycheck to paycheck and are struggling to pay for the necessities of living like rent, food, and transportation. We have had to work 2 or 3 jobs, take out student loans, and find extra roommates to get by. Many of my coworkers and community members have to choose between paying rent and buying groceries. The stress of financial strain has had a negative impact on our mental health. Living on our own, debt-free, on a single wage has become close to impossible. My coworkers and I, along with all low-wage workers, deserve a fair wage that we can survive on, especially with the rising cost of living. Over the last couple of years, the minimum wage increases have directly impacted me and my coworkers. It helps us make ends meet and has given us financial stability, allowing us to save for emergencies and plan for our futures. I have since joined a union, which has helped me get a higher wage. I'm glad to see that our government is committed to promoting fairness for workers. Although there is still much to be done to address income inequality, this announcement is a step in the right direction toward improving the quality of life for low-wage workers. We know how many people this change will impact and the positive difference it will make for families across the province. The increase in minimum wage is not just about numbers on a paycheck. It's about providing a better life for workers across the province and creating a brighter future for all workers. Thank you.
Marissa, thank you. Thank you very much. It is always important to hear from those who are impacted by low wages and minimum wage that impact so many of you. So thank you very much for coming and sharing your thoughts. Now I will ask Sam Jones, who I'm so kind to host us here owner of this coffee shop, to say a few words as a business owner.
Good afternoon, everyone. As a small business owner and a member of the Bread and Butter Collective, I prioritize fair wages, environmental stewardship, and exceptional service for our customers. I've always felt a sense of duty to serve our community. However, I have noticed that the playing field is not equal for all businesses, especially those like ours that prioritize these values. The current minimum wage in British Columbia is not enough to support workers' basic needs, and many corporations exploit this by keeping wages low to maximize profits. This creates an uneven playing field where small businesses like ours struggle to compete with larger corporations that prioritize profits over people. Despite our best efforts to pay our employees fairly, be environmentally responsible, and provide excellent service, we often find ourselves struggling to stay afloat. Meanwhile, larger corporations continue to reap the benefits of cheap labor and artificially keeping prices low, making it difficult for small businesses like ours to compete. The minimum wage increase is not only the right thing to do, but it's also a step in the right direction. And it is heartening to see that this is just the latest in a series of increases over the last several years. We must acknowledge, though, that there is still a long way to go. While this movement is in the right direction, the minimum wage is not where it needs to be to level the playing field between large profit-driven corporations and small value-based businesses like ours. Despite this, I remain optimistic about the future. With every increase of the minimum wage, we get a little closer to the parity needed to create a fair and equitable playing field in which to compete. I am proud to be part of an industry that values hard work, respect, and community. And I am committed to continue to advocate for fair wages and great exceptional service. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I'm honored to be alongside the Minister of Labour and Jobs and so many others who are committed to creating a fair and just economy. Let's continue to work towards a better future together for our employees and for our customers and for our communities. Thank you very much.
Okay, I think we're happy to take any questions now.
Thank you very much. A reminder to media on the line, please press *1 to enter the queue for the opportunity to ask a question and a follow-up. Our first question is coming from the room today. We hear from Marissa Bains, CBC.
Sure. So, Minister Bains, I'm looking at this. There's a policy of tying minimum wage to inflation. Can this be legislated?
Yeah, that's one of the options that we are looking at right now, and you will hear from me more on that in the future.
Follow-up, Mira?
When do you think we'll hear about that? The fall, or is there any time?
Before the next increase, which would be in 2024.
Okay, our next question also from the room. Richard Zussman, Global News.
This could be for Minister Bains or Minister Bailey. We've heard from businesses that they have felt compounding pressures on them around an additional statutory holiday, employer's health tax. They have felt pressure about sick days, and now an increase in the minimum wage. Will there be additional supports coming to businesses to offset some of these costs, considering they are also feeling increased pressure due to cost of living and inflation?
I will try to deal with that first, and then the minister will come and give her thoughts. I think one of the biggest complaint or the concern we have heard from businesses, small and large, is their inability to attract and retain workers. And many businesses right now, small businesses included, are paying more than a minimum wage. So I think this will go a long ways in attracting and retaining workers, so that that particular need of not having enough support to run the business at a full capacity is met at least. And but there are all kind of different support that we have already provided to the businesses all during the pandemic and since. But I will I will request our Minister of Jobs Innovation to perhaps address the rest of the question.
Thank you very much for the question. I think it's important to point out that I am working closely with the small business community, and I'll be meeting with our small business roundtable as well as leads from chambers and so on to talk to them exactly about this issue. And it's been my experience that when industry and government work together, that's when you come up with the best programming. And some examples that I shared in my speech are making it possible for businesses to buy liquor at wholesale pricing. That came about as a pilot project working with industry. And when it was very successful and well received, we made it permanent. That's an example of the kind of work we can do when we sit down with industry and talk to them about solutions to help them in what are very challenging times. There's no two ways about it. I've been a small business person myself. I recognize the challenges that folks are facing, and I'll be working with them on these issues.
The sector that seems the most frustrated by this is the restaurant sector. They are seeing costs in terms of food, in terms of transportation, general inflation costs. There is an offset there with what the employer has to pay compared to what the employee can bring home in some cases due to tips. Like, is there any thought being given around establishing a different minimum wage associated with the industry, or a cap to help offset some of those additional challenges in an industry that is often living very close to the margins?
Yes, it's my understanding that we're not considering different wage structures for restaurant industry. In the past, that has not worked well for people working in that industry, and I don't believe that's on the table. But aside from that, I would say that really the best solutions will come when we sit down and work collectively, and that's what I'm doing with the restaurant industry. I've got meetings with both Ian and Mark from BC and National Restaurant Associations to talk to them about what we can do together in this regard.
Next question comes from the phones. We hear from Binder Sachin, CTV. Binder, please go ahead.
Hi there. I'm just looking at the cost here. I guess if you have somebody who's working about 40 hours a week, that's an additional $2,000 a year per employee. And for small businesses, I mean, we've been hearing for months and months, and it's found as well, that it can be a struggle. More, which just want to add some of those small business support alongside this announcement.
Why not small business supports alongside this announcement?
These announcements will not be far apart. I'm working with the small business community right now, and we're accelerating this work. So I don't expect there to be a tremendously long gap before we have a bit of programming in place for small businesses. So this work is really happening in parallel.
Thank you. And Binder, yeah, sorry, your first question was a little bit spotty. Do you have a follow-up?
Yes. Sorry, I'm in the basement of the legislature, but I will try to speak clearer. Sam, I just wanted to talk to you. You talk about, as a small business owner, trying to do the right thing, you know, this minimum wage. Living wage says that there's a $7 gap between that, the minimum wage, and what you need to live in these cities. As a small business, looking at these corporations,
Sorry, Binder. We lost you about halfway through. If you, it might be, well, it is where you are in the legislature, I'm certain. If you want to send Richard your follow-up, he can read it out for you for sure. In the meantime, thanks, Binder. We'll come back to you. We're going to now go to the next reporter on the phones. We're going to hear from Wolf Deppner, Black Press. Wolf, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for taking my question. Question concerning this proposal to tie the minimum wage to inflation. In the past, we have seen inflation to be relatively steady, but in the recent years, we've seen inflation spike significantly. What, if any, plans does your proposal sort of consider when it comes to creating a tunnel within which inflation would exist? In other words, are you looking to consistently tie the increase to inflation as it exists, or are you looking to create a little bit more flexibility to avoid any sudden spikes, perhaps, in inflation?
Yeah, as I answered previously, that work is going on. We are considering our options. How do we tie the minimum wage to the rate of inflation so that our lowest paid workers do not fall behind? Because reality is We understand businesses are hurting, coming through the pandemic and on an ongoing basis. But also, we need to understand the minimum wage workers have at least latitude to afford to continue to fall behind. So I think we need to make sure that minimum wage workers do not left behind. At the same time, there's a predictability and for the businesses as well and for the workers to know that what the minimum wage would be going forward if you link that to the rate of inflation. So that work is ongoing, and we will make that announcement going forward.
Okay, and Wolf, if we could ask you also to speak clearly and loudly. There's some competing noise in the room here. Do you have a follow-up?
Oh, yes, I do. Thank you. And apologies for any sound issues over here. Since I have the Minister of Labour and the Minister of Innovation here, what's the possibility or how much thought has our government given to introducing a basic living income? A number of jurisdictions across the world are experimenting with that idea. What, if any, thoughts does the BC government have on that subject?
So when we formed government, I appointed Fair Wages Commission. Their job was to come back to us, how do we reach $15 an hour over a certain period of time? And the second part was to guide us what we can do to deal with the discrepancy between the minimum wage and the living wage. So that report I have just received a couple of days ago. We are examining it, and we will see what the recommendations are there and what the government can do in order to look at the recommendation that they are doing.
And now we'll come back to the room for Binder Sujjan's follow-up via Richard. Binder, thanks for sending that along. Richard, please go ahead.
So Sam, it's for you. As a small business owner trying to do the right thing and struggling against big businesses who are making a lot of money in some regards on the back of workers, what do you think some of the solutions could be from the province or industry to help address, upwards pressure on cost of living while also competing with some of these big international retailers or organizations?
Thanks for the question. I think one thing is we can look at where these big corporations are coming from. Are they British Columbian companies, or are they American companies coming into Canada and paying our people the least amount that they're legally allowed to pay them? I think that there needs to be a solution. The gap between what is known as a fair or a living wage and the minimum wage, that gap is part of the issue. That gap is where these larger companies can exploit their workers and build their market. They can keep their products cheaper, and in a time where people are looking for cheaper products, that's a real unfair advantage, where at the same time, you get a small business like myself or any one of the Bread and Butter Collective members, we all believe that everything starts by treating people more fairly. And as soon as you stop treating people fairly and you start treating them as a means to get somewhere or get more, we're already in a much more difficult situation. So I believe the solution is working together with organizations like the Living Wage Organization and the government of British Columbia. Working together with our industry, we can work on creating industry-specific solutions. And I agree that the restaurant industry is one of the most impacted industries in today's economy. And that's where I'm coming from. And I believe that working together, these groups can get together, come up with better solutions, and a high tide raises all ships.
Thank you very much, everyone. That concludes today's availability.
Thank you very much once again.